It's time for the Engaged Club, the podcast for club managers and operators that strive to create loyal and connected members, guests, and customers. Here are the two guys with the club management and digital marketing advice you need to realize your club's potential. Jim Hope and Roger Kincaid.
Welcome back to another episode of the Engaged Club podcast. I'm Roger Kincaid. I am the marketing guy, the sales guy for Off Course Golf.
I am Jim Hope, the GM of the Derrick Golf and Winter Club. This is probably be a bit of a different podcast from what you've heard before, and that it's going to be a little more interactive between Roger and I, because I am talking about a subject that Roger is the expert in, but is important to us at our club. So, and what I am going to do though, Roger, is when I hear it looks like you want to jump in, I will be quiet to let you jump in and not talk right over you like I've done in the past. Okay? So I'll make sure that I let you jump in when you want to, because there's a good chance that I'm going to say something that may not be accurate. So please jump in and correct me. Okay.
What's the topic?
I want no fake news going out here. The topic is old guys use mobile tech too. And it's true, right? You and I are doing this podcast, and we're communicating back and forth with ideas and times and what we want to do, and promoting the podcast through Slack, right? Which has been around for 3 or 4 years now, but is a go-to device for a lot of companies to be able to use, because you can segregate the topics, and I can be on 3 or 4 of them, or I can be on 1, or I can be on 100, and it's sort of real-time talking, and it archives your discussions really easy for you to be able to find. And so I've noticed in the club business, mobile technology and just technology itself has changed the way that we do business. It's changed the way our members are doing business. We've got a group at our club who meet, I think, 7 days a week for coffee. They probably they come in at different times. They'll work out in the morning. These are all gentlemen that would be in their, I'm not sure any are in their 60s. I think we probably are starting in the 70s and working our way up. And they're called the Senators. There'll be, at any point in time, there'll be 2 at the table, or there'll be 8, depends upon who's down south in the wintertime and who's up, back in Edmonton. And you'll look on that table, and there will be 3 iPhones, a big Google phone, and they'll have conversations. And actually, one of them goes to the phone to Google, the question that somebody asked, or they'll say, "That's crap, that's not true," and next they're on Google trying to solve the answer. And these are gentlemen that are in their 70s and potentially in their 80s. So to think that that they're not using technology, or technology doesn't need to be used at our clubs is a misnomer these days. One of the things that's interesting is one of them actually has, it just dropped my mind. The scheduling app that people use for teams, for their kids' sports teams and stuff. TeamSnap.
Yeah, TeamSnap. Yeah.
TeamSnap. And they've got TeamSnap because they want to go to their kids' soccer games and their kids' hockey games. So they're actually logged in the TeamSnap. They're also able, if they don't go to the game, to be able to see live updates of the scores of their grandkids' hockey games. So to think that your members aren't using or don't want technology at your club is wrong. I mean, I think we probably all agree that they do.
That's true. And so let me just slip in here, because what you've just described is the value proposition. The reason why, we seem to have this idea that old people don't want to adopt technology, like iPhones, for example. And when you put the iPhone in front of, someone who's 70 years old back in 2008, they might just go, I want nothing to do with this. I don't need it. But when you tell them, this is a great place where you can keep hundreds of photos of your grandkids. Now we're talking about the value proposition, and that's what locks people in, right? You can just touch a button, see when your grandson's hockey game is, and you can, go to it. That's a value proposition. And so when we talk about then, technology in clubs, we shouldn't think about the device. We should think about the value that the device brings. That's the entry point for the conversation.
Correct. And is there an engagement piece with that if you embrace that technology, there's a way that you can get your member more engaged with the club?
Well, 100%, because it's up to the club then to provide that value, right? So it's like if you have, that iPhone and you tell somebody, hey, this is a great place for you to have 100 pictures of your grandkids that you can look at anytime you want, then they'll say, well, that's a great idea, but who's going to provide the pictures of my grandchildren? I don't have any children myself. So the value is not there, right? What we need is somebody to be putting the value into the technology. And so that's what the club's role in adopting new technology is.
I mean, we're seeing it even now on golf carts where, the standard option on a golf cart now is a USB charger.
Yes.
Why? I'm playing golf. What do I need a USB charger for? Because I need to keep my phone and my Bluetooth speaker charged while I'm playing golf for 4 hours. And I don't want to carry a battery pack around with me. I want the golf cart to be able to do that for me. Yeah. You're seeing interactive options that are coming out. Golf carts, they've aligned with Greg Norman, and I think it's called the Shark Experience. And this is going to be an interactive monitor that's on your cart that will have Spotify or Pandora downloaded, so I don't have to have my phone. I can get it right off the cart. It's going to have a monitor so that if you're trying to get somebody to play golf on a Sunday afternoon when their favorite NFL team's playing, they'll be able to watch. Verizon is the partner I think they're using in the States. You're going to be able to watch that NFL game while they're playing golf on the golf cart. So what they're saying is let's remove the barriers from somebody not playing golf on a Sunday afternoon because of another sporting event that's on that they want to watch. And that's going to be a value added for the club. So you're going to have to pay for that technology when it hits the cart originally, but they'll charge the consumer more every time they turn that on when they take the cart off the first tee. So sure. They're generating extra revenue, but the bottom line is that it's being demanded of the customer that they want that mobile, they want technology to become part of the golf experience for them now. I mean, that's a story. That becomes a story that happens in your market when your club is the one that has, the NFL Sunday ticket or whatever, right? When you can watch the Bears game. For our friends in Illinois, when you can watch that Bears game while what am I talking about? It would be in Arizona when you can watch the Cardinals or the Bucs game while you're out on the course, right? No one's withering in Illinois, just so you know, Roger.
Yeah, those guys are in the clubhouse, maybe. But anyway, that becomes a story in your market, right? When you're the club that's offering that, and when you're the club that's adopted some technology that can provide some value then for your members and for your guests, that becomes a bit of a story, and it's more that you can do. I had a really fortunate experience lately, Jim, to be able to speak to the NGCOA in Canada about the customer experience, right, and how digital marketing plays into this. And somebody at the end of my education session asked, how much should you pay for technology like this? And my answer to that particular, club operator was, it depends on your use case, right? I mean, you can't just look at the price tag on an item and say, that's worth it for me. You got to figure out what the value that's going to bring to your property is and how much more your customers, your members, your guests are going to be able to give you in return for that. So, then it just becomes a mathematical equation at that point. If I have to pay $300 for a piece of technology that's going to give me, $1,000 extra in the till every month, so I'm net $700 in the black, then it's a good idea. But you got to think that, if I put this in, is it going to, push the peanut in the right direction? And if the answer is no, then $1 is too expensive. Right. I mean, as an operator, especially in the semi-private or the public market, you really almost need to do an ROI on anything that you embrace because it's a tough market out there these days. But there's some stuff that we've talked about that is just table stakes, right? You just have to do that to be in the marketplace. And a great website is that. You can't, even though you're not sure you can quantify what a great website will do to your bottom line, you just need to have one, or at least you should, because everybody else does or your competitors do. And while it's true, Jim, it's difficult to quantify that exactly. What you can do is take a blind leap on getting a new website and then compare your stats from this year, the first year you have the new website, to the last year that you had the old website, and see what the improvements are. Because sure. I guarantee you, and I'd stake a lot of claim on this, that if you upgrade a website that performs very poorly on mobile devices to one that is mobile responsive, we know that Google will give you a benefit in your search traffic right off the bat. We know that you'll realize a benefit there. And I would hazard to guess that you'll achieve more bookings from people that are using mobile devices, which is more than 50% of internet traffic. So there's a whole lot of reasons to take that leap. And I bet you if you compared your analytics from the first year that you had that new mobile responsive website to the last year when you had your kind of outdated non-responsive website, that you would see some improvements that definitely show up on your bottom line. Well, and in the private club market, as you know, Raj, most of the players, the clubs in the private club, both in Canada and the United States, are using Jonas as their back of the house system for some for tea time bookings. Majority of all would be for their accounting side of their business, and it would also be the platform that they're using for their website.
And my members, if they're logging into their site and the stats are there that they're doing it through their mobile devices as opposed to their PC at home, that thing has to be friendly for them to be able to view, because that's where they're looking at my site from. And there's a number of sites that aren't still, which is phenomenal for me that a club would be not embracing that technology and embracing a way to communicate with their members. I can remember, there wasn't that long ago that if you were to have your annual meeting, which everybody has at their club, you would send out a proxy form to your shareholders, which allowed them to either assign their vote to somebody else and give that to that person to be able to vote at the meeting, or they would vote themselves and assign that voted proxy to a person. So I arrive at my AGM, I sign up, and they say, Jim, here's 4 proxies from you, and I take my proxies. They may already be voted, but those votes are then registered at the meeting. And that would be at the very bottom, it would say, complete the proxy and fax back to the club. And I'll bet you most proxy forms today still say fax back to the club. But I can tell you that when we adopted online voting at our club, which was cheap and it was simple to do, and it was as secure as anything, so that you were comfortable that there was no manipulation to the votes, unlike Florida and the state of Georgia. That's actually, it was secure. We had no more faxed in proxies, like zero. We went to zero faxed in proxies. And the number of people voting at our annual meeting or at a special project that we were trying to get through tripled in number. And we could absolutely tell that the minute the service that we use to do the online voting put a notification out that, remember, online voting is open and available and you haven't voted yet, we could see a spike within minutes of people voting. And that they did it from their mobile device at a red light, because it was just that simple to be able to use. So we got better member engagement. More members were involved in the club and had a say in what the club wanted to do. So that's a good thing. And I think anybody today would just look at that as a really simple fix to be able to get more members out to the club. But that's embracing technology.
Exactly.
And it's something that our senior member who has a fax machine at home or had a fax machine in his office is no longer using the fax when they can just click vote here on their computer or on their handheld device.
Right. And one of the reasons for that is because they are finding fewer and fewer opportunities to use the fax machine. Fax machines were great, except you needed someone else to have a fax machine in order for you to get value out of your fax machine, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Same with email addresses. Like the first email address was worthless until the second email address came about, right?
Right.
Because you need to have other people that you can send emails to. So like the point of that story that I take away from that story, Jim, is that when we provide people the value and we provide them a much easier way to do A, B, and C, that's how we really showcase the value of adopting technology. So we see this all the time with our mobile apps. When we go into a club and we say, look, we'll make an app for your club. And one of the biggest things on this app, in fact, the largest component of this app is a button that says book a tea time. And you will see right away, particularly in semi-private clubs and private clubs, well, obviously in private clubs is what I'm about to say, but particularly in semi-private clubs, members download that app for the convenience of being able to touch a button on their phone and get to the tee sheet, as opposed to logging into a browser and using the tiny soft keyboard on their phone to do the same thing, or waiting until they're at home or at the office. No, we don't condone using your cell phone when you drive. And you mentioned the red light thing, Jim, but you literally can just touch a button, get to the tee sheet, book your tee time while you're waiting for the light to turn green. I mean, it's that quick and easy. And so if you're looking for the value proposition of putting technology like a mobile app in your club, that right there is a very compelling reason. And then you add on top of that the other things that you can do with that technology, and it just sort of snowballs from there.
You bet. Like my golf pro, as an example, uses your app multiple times a day to view the tee sheet. He said it's just so easy to do. He can be anywhere in the club, pull out his smartphone, and view the tee sheet to see what the activity is in the sheet for that day.
And you're at a private club context when you make that comment. In a semi-private club context, for example, you might have that head pro that will do the exact same thing that your pro does on a Friday night and see that there's a foursome available at 8:30 the following morning, and go ahead and send a push notification out to the people that have downloaded the app and say, hey, we've got a spot tomorrow at 8:30 if you want it. This is great when cancellations happen, but it gives you the immediacy and the power to send an instant message out to everybody who's also got that app and capture that person who goes, I wasn't even thinking about golfing tomorrow, or I can never get a tee time for a Saturday morning on a Friday evening. and they'll go ahead and book that. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in there because we know that that's a behavior that we see a lot of.
But to that point, that works in the private club market as well, because it could be Friday night and you realize, yeah, hey, my Saturday just freed up, but I just assumed the Saturday morning was full because it's the busiest time at the club to play golf. And when you just send me a push notification or an instant message that says, hey, 8:42 is open on Saturday morning, you're going to call a couple other buddies that you knew were in the same boat as you, but now are free and book a tee time at your club in order to be able to play. So, yeah, I don't think it's restricted to the semi-private or to the private market or public market. Sorry, I think it's available for the private market as well. And one of the things I mentioned, I attended the Western Regional Seminar, which is held annually. It's a CSCM, a Canadian Society Club Manager event. And it's held in obviously Western, so it's in Western Canada and kind of moves around different cities doesn't go further east than Calgary. And it was in Calgary last year. And one of the things that we're challenged with every club is challenged with it in the private market, especially, is communicating with our members. And we've talked about that in a previous podcast, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more. But was how do we effectively communicate with you, the member? And there was a panel discussion. There was 4 members from 4 different clubs in Calgary. There were some of them were really large multifamily clubs, with golf attached. Some of them were dining clubs, and others were golf clubs. And there was a full range of age that was on that panel. And the question came to them. They talked about a number of things, and there was the mic was being passed around for a Q&A, and I grabbed the mic and I said, the challenge we face is communicating with our members. Is it the newsletter? Is how do we get our message up to you? And to a person, the age was irrelevant. And there was somebody on the panel who would have been in their 70s, and there was somebody who was in their early 20s, you've got to communicate with me with an app. They said, I want to have the ability to log into my club. They did want a shopping cart it, though. They said, don't tell me about daycare because I don't have any kids. Don't tell me about badminton, but I don't play. I want to be able to hear about these specific topics and then send me notifications on my phone about that at the club. They did talk about email, and they said if it's structured and it's in a fashion that they and at a time that they like, it won't get lost in the minutia of their day and the filling of their inbox. But they did talk about the fact that they are all mobile. They all wanted to be able to do it off their mobile devices. And they wanted to be able to look at the club really quickly to see if that's something that they wanted to do. And then the interesting thing that every single one agreed on, they wanted to be able to click here to book your spot. So if you're sending me a notification that there's a wine dinner coming up and we got a winemaker up from California and this is the menu that the chef's going to do, that's great. But don't make me log out, then log into the website and do all of that to book my time. It's got to be click here. So, and this was, as I said, this was somebody in their early 20s and somebody in their 70s. And they were consistent in that message that they use their mobile devices and they want to be able to book things on it. And that was a real takeaway for me, that it solidified for me that any doubts that I had that my members were using their mobile technology was gone.
All right.
At that point, I knew that that's what I needed to have.
Yeah, exactly. Let's wrap this one up, Jim. A couple of takeaways and some actionable steps if you want. One of my big takeaways from this is that, when we're thinking about technology or, applications like a mobile application for the club or, you mentioned Slack earlier, like there's hundreds of applications out there that can help our clubs out. When you're looking at one, think about it from the context of what's the value that it will add for the end user? What's the value that this will add for my member, for my public player, for the guests of my members? And then as opposed to what I think we reflexively do, which is think about the value that this gives to the club or me as a manager, right? Think about the value that this is going to give to the end user.
Right. I just want to add to that, but that's really important. It's that value it gives to the end user, which in our case would be the member of our club. But I'd say to the managers, don't be afraid of anything. Don't be afraid to try everything. Don't be afraid to podcast. Maybe podcasting is a medium that you can use to get information out to your members. I know a club that is doing they're doing a live Facebook with a cooking demonstration by their chef. So they've set up in the kitchen, the chef's going to teach the members at home how to cook. There's going to be members live in the kitchen, but they're also opening it up to their whole audience. So all I would say is it's here to stay, and don't be afraid to try anything, because at the end of the day, you can stop doing it if you're not feeling you're getting the value for it. But try it all.
So do a few things for yourself right now, right? Take an audit of a lot of the technology that you've got at your club and ask yourself, what's the value that this provides? Is this something that we need to keep doing? Is this something we should stop doing? Should we start doing a lot more of this? Also do an audit of some of the trends that you're noticing around the club, right? If like Jim, you've got those senators that gather for coffee and they've all got their iPhones out on the table, then you can sort of think that, mobile really is a presence here at this club. And maybe we can do more things for a mobile platform as opposed to for a desktop platform. And then you know what? go shopping. Like get online, start with Google, find some ways, some tools, some applications that you can engage your club members a little bit more with technology and go down that path a little bit. Call that vendor, that supplier, ask them the questions and find out what the value in those particular items is for your end user. And that's how you use technology to really develop the value proposition of your club.
Thanks, Roger. This was an awesome podcast. Thanks.
Thank you very much for listening. If you like the Engaged Club podcast, please share it with all your friends. Until next time.
This has been the Engaged Club podcast with Jim Hope and Roger Kincaid. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you like what you heard, share it with your fellow club managers and operators. Until next time, thanks for listening.